The one question people always ask me is, what is your favorite musical? I honestly tell them I don't know. I have a lot of favorite musicals. It's kind of hard to pick your favorite show. What I did was I took a list of about 50 musicals and I kind of chopped it down to my top 20. So today I'm going to give you the first half of my top 20 favorite musicals. A lot of this is based on just what I like personally in a musical. A lot of it is looking at storytelling and themes. But here we go, 20 through 11, my top 20 favorite musicals. The first musical, number 20, it was really difficult to pick because with how simple this musical is, I'm kind of surprised it still made the cut, but it did. And that is Jason Robert Brown's The Last 5 Years.
I can do better than that.
And if you haven't seen The Last 5 Years, it's basically about this couple where the guy is moving chronologically through the relationship, and then there's the girl who's moving the opposite way in the relationship, moving back, going from the end to the beginning of the relationship. And they both kind of meet in the middle, and they interact with each other that one time at their marriage, and then they just keep going their separate ways. It's a really heartfelt musical, and it takes a look at a simple boy meets girl relationship. Once you find out it's based off of Jason Robert Brown's past relationship, it just becomes so much more personal. It's simple, but it's really interesting with the structure and how they present the relationship, and I love it. It's one of my favorites. The next musical is one that I also didn't think would make the list, but it did. It's because of all these golden age musicals, it's probably my favorite from that era, and that is On the Town. If you haven't seen it, On the Town is basically the story of 3 sailors who during wartime, their ship ports in New York City and they get a 24-hour leave, meaning they can go to New York City, go see the town, do whatever they want, and they end up all somehow getting in these relationships with these 3 women. It's all about these characters finding out who they are in these relationships and kind of what are they going to do with this 24 hours on land. There's a moment in the second act where all the girls are on the subway and the whole group, they're going to look for Gaby at Coney Island. They're realizing that the sun's setting, their time's almost over, so they sing Some Other Time. It's basically about what happens when they have to part ways and that, well, we can't really do anything about it, so let's part ways and we'll meet up some other time. But it also just speaks to a more general term of just leaving and loss and being separated and what it really means to be in love. And what is really great about this show is the whole time you know they're going to go back on the boat, you know they only have 24 hours, you're told that from the beginning, and you forget about it when you get invested in these characters, and at the end they run back on the boat, and then 3 more sailors come off and start their 24-hour leave. And they sing New York, New York, and the whole process starts over again. And you know what's going to happen, you expect it, but you are still torn at the end when you see them separated. It's heartbreaking. So that's why I think there's some nuances in this musical that people miss, and that's why it's one of my favorite Golden Age musicals, because it really goes deeper than a lot of musicals did at the time. A lot of people have mixed feelings about this show, but I still like it, and I think these mixed feelings are the reason why I put this show on my list. And for that I'm talking about Pippin. There really isn't one clear answer on the story of Pippin, its intention, and that really leaves it up to interpretation, which I find interesting. There's so many different productions and views on this show. One big example is 2013 on Broadway when they had a revival. The whole revival is based around a circus theme. The leading player was changed from a man to a woman and added a whole other layer to Pippin, the leading player's relationship. But Pippin really is a great example of a coming-of-age story. That is Pippin being tempted by money and fame and power and all these entertaining yet dark forces and all these people trying to tempt him. Yet at the end he decides he just wants a simple life with Catherine and her son Theo. And what's interesting is at the end he says that he does feel trapped, but he's happy. Once you go along this journey, you figure out that all that you wanted was really what you already had, this simple life. What's great about the 2013 revival is at the end when Pippin leaves and he's no longer the leading man, Theo steps forward, Catherine's child, and he sits on the swing, and the leading player and the troupe come out, and they kind of start that cycle again and tempt him. It's kind of that reoccurring thing of that troupe and that leading player's that kind of consciousness in you, and it's always going to come back. And that's why, despite the critics, I really love Pippin. I think there's a lot of good story elements in it, despite it being a little muddled. The 70s brought a lot of really interesting new tropes to Broadway. And I think one thing it brought was marrying rock music and Broadway style staging and putting it into one. And I think at that time it really brought Broadway back into pop culture again to compete with pop charts and rock music. And that show was Hair.
This is my doom.
Hair really embodied the free spirit of the 60s, that hippie culture, and they were fighting the man, fighting the government, corporations, the Vietnam War, with all those political elements tied with race and sex and free love and just being who you are and living that truth. And what I thought was interesting at the end was it all kind of culminates to all these ideas they have about the war, and they've been telling the audience how much they hate the Vietnam War. They burn their draft cards and they're not going to go. Claude ends up going, and their fears are realized, and Claude actually dies at the end. The ending is kind of this, let the sun shine in, but it's kind of this grief of look what we lost because these young lives are losing. And it's just interesting how such a song about letting sunshine in, shining a light, it's really shining a light on some of the darker moments in our country's history when it came to the Vietnam War. I think with how rebellious and angsty Hair is, it really does a lot with, as an historical piece, and talking about our country's history. And it's also just really good rock music, and brought that rock score to future musicals. I mean, most musicals now have a rock or a pop score, and it really did change what Broadway music sounded like. So I think really Hair is one of the musicals that really did change New York and Broadway and what the musical could be. And that's why I love Hair so much. Another musical in the 70s that really changed Broadway, but for many other reasons, that is Sweeney Todd. Stephen Sondheim really wanted to change musical theater during this time in the 70s. He brought a lot of shows like Company that changed the narrative, but with Sweeney Todd he had a really specific idea in mind. He wanted to scare a Broadway audience, and he did. He scared the audience. I think a testament to Sweeney Todd's success was the score. The score really was its own character, and it drew the audience into the opening and had this push and pull effect. The music is so iconic, you almost think of it as a film score because you can pinpoint certain moments of the different songs. I also love Sweeney Todd because all the characters, there's a small ensemble, but they're all so important and vital to the story. You have the beggar woman, who comes in some of the time, but she's really tied into the main conflict of Sweeney. And then you have, of course, Mrs. Lovett, who's a great character. She loves Sweeney and you feel for her, but also she's very manipulative and strategic in the way she interacts with Sweeney. And there's one of the best anti-heroes, I think, ever, Sweeney Todd. And really, you start to feel for this barber, this guy who's slitting people's throats. You really feel for him and how his family was taken away, and he's just trying to get his family back. And I think how complex these characters are and how there's really no good and evil, I think that's what makes it interesting. You know, people aren't inherently good or evil. We kind of all ride in the middle, and we're still trying to figure ourselves out down the line. And that's just why I love Sweeney so much. It's such a good musical. I wasn't excited for this musical at first, even when I heard the music, because I was not really sure about the movie. But I quickly changed my mind, and that is Once the Musical. I thought the movie dragged a lot. I thought the characters were not interesting, the guy and the girl. Their relationship was not compelling. While the music was different and simplistic, it didn't really blow me away in the movie. I didn't get it. I didn't like that movie. But then I saw the ensemble of the Broadway musical perform in New York. They did a big selection of Celtic music and songs for the show, and they did it at 54 Below. I was so drawn in by how all these incredibly talented performers were switching off instruments, going from everywhere from the piano to an accordion, and they were incredible singers and dancers, and I said, yep, I have to go see this eventually. Years later, I saw the tour, and I was sold. I think it really is a testament to taking a movie that was not really good, translating it to the stage, and not only does it work well on the stage, but I think it improved on the original story. Even though the audience kind of wants it, and you think they might be able to get together, they just don't. They don't end up in a relationship, but they are still tied together with music. I think it's the story of music kind of transcending relationships and kind of that bond that people have with music. And I think at the end, music is what ties these two together, not love. And that's what makes it a really interesting relationship, that mutual respect they have for each other as artists. Next up is a show that I think is one of Disney's best films. It's just amazing what they did with it on stage. And I saw this film, one of the first films I saw in theaters. I still love it. It's Lion King. I saw The Lion King when it came out in the theaters and was blown away by it. But when I first saw the show, I really thought, how are they going to make this work? It's animals. How are they going to put animals on stage? And the way they used choreography and puppetry to tell this story is really just Disney magic in itself. I think Lion King is one of Disney's best epics. It's their big epic. It's their Titanic. It's kind of a culmination of all that Disney can do with storytelling. And I really think it shows that in The Lion King. I think it's a great musical. It's very entertaining. I think The Lion King is one of Disney's best musicals they put out, up there with Beauty and the Beast. It's a really great show, and there's a reason why I've seen it 5 times. It's not just nostalgia, it's just Disney doing what Disney does best. Here I was born and here. Memphis was a show I was really excited about, and it was really one of the few shows that met all my expectations when I went and saw it. Memphis is based off of this disc jockey in Memphis, Tennessee, and he was in the 50s. He was one of the first to bring race music, black music, to a white audience, and he played it on the radio. It was really unheard of at the time, and he kind of brought it there. There's a great balance between the political undertones and the entertainment value of this musical, and that's why it works so well. It's really hard for a musical to tackle race and politics. Shows like Memphis don't really come around as often as they should. There's 2 really great songs. There's Colored Woman, which really tells of Felicia's experience not only as a woman, but as a black woman in the 50s. Another great song is Say a Prayer. That is when Gator sings at the end of Act 2. This is where Huey kisses Felicia, and a group of white men come, and they basically beat up Felicia, and they send her off to the hospital. They want change to happen, they want race relations to be better, but they don't know when that's going to happen, so they can just pray for now. That's what I love about Memphis. It's not really about change, it's more about progress. It's about what progress have we made and what progress do we still need to make in our society. Frank Wildhorn is a really interesting character on Broadway because for some reason the critics just do not like his work. I disagree. I like a lot of his work. I love Jekyll and Hyde. It's one of my favorites, but the one I want to put on this list is Bonnie and Clyde, which is by far one of my favorite Frank Wildhorn shows. When I drive. I love Bonnie and Clyde because I love the fusion of the score. It's this country folk score along with a Broadway score, and it really gives this really interesting, eclectic culmination of music. And I still listen to the soundtrack. It's one of my favorite Broadway soundtracks. It really does show that this is a tragic love story and that both these characters had issues, but they still were brought together by this goal of becoming bigger than they are, better than they are. And even though they do kind of hinder each other, they really do try to bring each other up and motivate each other. It's a messy, complicated relationship between 2 what you think are criminals, and I think that story is really well reflected on stage, and it also brings a lot more interesting subplots and characters. I really hope it has a revival soon. It really deserves the recognition it didn't get its first time around. Disney has kind of been really picky about its projects, and I think this musical came as a surprise. This musical was different than the other Disney Broadway shows. The fans wanted it, the fans petitioned for it, and the fans got it. And I really think that it became kind of this cash cow, this cultural phenomenon that Disney didn't really expect it to be. Of course, I'm talking about Newsies. Newsies came out in the early 90s. It was kind of Disney saying, okay, we've done the live musical thing, we've done the animated musical, we really need to do a live musical movie. So they put out Newsies, and it bombed. It was not good. But what they didn't expect was Newsies kind of hit this cult movie status and had this big fan base that nobody really expected. So when Disney was really mass producing musicals, they really petitioned hard to have Newsies made into a musical. And what I love Disney for doing is, I think Disney really sat down and said, okay, the film didn't work, why didn't it work, and how can we fix it? And they really took the time to make big and subtle changes to really make Newsies better. They added a couple songs, they brought a lot of the songs from the movie, and they really just cleaned it up and brought this amazing choreography which makes the show. It's really a testament to where Newsies ran a limited run at the Paper Mill Playhouse. It went to Broadway, was advertised as a limited run, then they opened it up and ran for about 2 years. And they were nominated for a bunch of Tonys, including Best Musical. And now Newsies is back into the pop culture spectrum. I mean, it's a phenomenon now. The Newsies are back and better than ever. But that's the first 10 musicals I've gone through. I still have 10 more. The next 10 are really are my favorite musicals, but I really had to get this list out of the way because these shows are so important for what they did. Thank you guys so much for watching. The second part of this will come out really soon. I will see you guys next time. Bye-bye.